As the diplomatic solution to the Ukraine crisis draws closer to completion, we are entering a phase in which a military conflict is becoming more likely. In the recent 24 to 48 hours, the United States has increased its warnings about an approaching Russian invasion, saying that intelligence assets are picking up clear evidence that Vladimir Putin is preparing Russian land, air, and naval forces to launch an armed assault on Ukraine. If this occurs, which is more likely than not, it would be the most spectacular display of military might since the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003. Today's YouNik video will explore the implications of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the devastation it will cause the rest of the world. A Russian invasion of Ukraine would be both terrible and sad for the Ukrainian people, as they have experienced before. For the reason that Ukraine is not a member of NATO, the United States and its allies will refrain from intervening militarily to defend it. Furthermore, the Biden administration is acutely aware of the possibility of World War III if it fights Russian soldiers beyond the NATO border. In addition to anti-tank weapons, the United States and its NATO allies have offered substantial military aid to Ukraine, which will definitely make life more difficult for Russian forces. In the event that Russia attempts to seize control of the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, it will easily beat Ukrainian defenses as a consequence of its numerical superiority, overwhelming weapons, and cutting-edge cyber warfare capabilities. Many people anticipate that the Russians will seize control of Kiev in a matter of days, rather than weeks, as others have predicted. Invasion by the Russians would be disastrous for the Russian population as well as for the Ukrainian people. In order to exert long-term pressure on Russia's economy, the United States and its allies aim to apply an extensive spectrum of sanctions on the Russian government and its citizens. Invading and conquering Ukraine would be very expensive for Russia as it did for Crimean Peninsula, which we will discuss in another video. Conquering Ukraine, it would further solidify its reputation as a worldwide villain if it did so. Although Vladimir Putin's nationalist aspiration to be remembered as the Russian leader who may be able to restore Ukraine to the fold of the original Soviet Union will be realized, there will be no tangible benefits for Russia as a result of the agreement. As a result of Putin's actions, NATO's political will has been reinforced, and the United States has increased the number of troops stationed in Eastern Europe, which borders Russia and Ukraine. As a result, rather than improving, Russia's long-term security will be harmed rather than strengthened. Several huge difficulties would stand in the way of the United States and its European allies if Russia were to invade. The first problem will be dealing with the projected influx of migrants from Ukraine into the country. Those who live in Ukraine's immediate surroundings will suffer a humanitarian disaster beyond anything they have experienced since World War II. It will be vital to keep a close check on the performance of Russian military equipment and personnel during any invasion. This will get valuable insight into how Russian hardware assets perform in combat, and US and NATO will have access to exact intelligence on high-tech weapons systems that NATO may encounter in the future as a result of this operation. The United States and its allies want to keep Russia from expanding its influence farther westward in Europe. The deployment of extra US combat personnel in Europe sends a message to Putin that the United States will be quickly engaged in the battle if he chooses to send Russian forces over the border into NATO member nations or the Baltic states. Both Moscow and Washington have a lot of muscle memory from the Cold War, which should help them avoid escalation risks that may result in US and Russian forces fighting one another. YouNik believes neither side should take the risk of triggering World War III in Ukraine. Armed conflict, on the other hand, has the potential to spin out of control, as history has shown, and it has devastating effects on their own country as well as the rest of the world for a long period of time than anyone can remember. Only time will be able to answer all these questions, but in the meantime, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this video, and if you're a new subscriber, please consider doing so.